Okay, so welcome back. On Wednesdays, unfortunately, we will be in this classroom. On Thursdays, we will go to the larger one. Well, one bad thing about this classroom is that it doesn't have a microphone. So I will have to speak aloud, which I'm not used to. So somebody from the back, you should warn me if I just go very silent. Okay? Don't hesitate. So that is something I wanted to work on for a long time, but I always had excuses not to do. So this will be my opportunity. Okay, the course, the way we will be carrying out this 110 will be almost identical to 109. But as far as I know, there are a few students who didn't take 109 or 110 before, right? So did everybody take 109 or 110 from me? No. Who didn't take 109 or 110 from me? Okay, so there were a couple of students. So I will go over the regulations first. It will be kind of boring for the rest, but keep up. Now, I will be using OptiClass, where I will be uploading all the notes and the homeworks, etc. So there are already some of the course outline, more or less, which topics we will be covering every week. This is what I had covered last year, and you also have what I have, the record with the videos of last year's 110 course. So if you miss it, you can just rewatch the video, or I will be also recording the screen. So whatever I write, I will be uploading in OptiClass, so you can just review them. I'm also recording the sound, so you can also listen to it. Now, you already know me. I will also be putting these slides on the OptiClass, so if there is any question, if there's something not clear, or if you have missed it, you can just go over these slides. Most of the material here is already what I have talked about last year in the first meeting. So the book is still the same book. We will be going over Holiday and Resnick. For those students who took the 109 or 110 last year or previous years, the book is different. While the outline for the electromagnetism part, the part that we will be covering, more or less coincides with the previous book, so you won't have this problem that you had last year. Now, the thing that we will be studying this year will be the charges, one of the fundamental forces that we have. If you remember, last year we had studied the Newton dynamics, so if we know the force, we can determine what's the motion of the object. Now, the whole semester will be devoted to the study of one force only, the electromagnetic force, how it behaves, acts on charges, how we create it, etc. And as usual, we will start from the simple case, that is charges at rest. And we will be studying the electric charge, the field it creates, what we mean by the electric field, Gauss's law, the potential energy of this electromagnetic field, and also we will be talking about the electric potential, which is different than the potential energy. The capacitors, these are, if you have ever opened up an electronic device, you have probably seen some cylinders inside or some very small disc-like objects which look like lenses. Those are called the capacitors, which contain dielectrics, and they store the electric energy. And of course, all those devices work by manipulating the electric currents, and then we will study some simple circuits. Then the next step would be, first we have charges at rest in an arbitrary reference frame. Then we go to charges that are moving with constant speed, that is motion with zero acceleration. And we will see that there is another aspect of this electromagnetic force that we call the magnetism. I mean, if you have ever played with magnets, we will see that they are actually kind of moving charges, create this magnetic effect. We will study the sources of the magnetic field and the induction. I mean, if you have these electric toothbrushes, you charge them, you just put them on a device, and it just automatically charges itself. There is no wire going into it, but nevertheless, you get electric energy transferred into it. That is how the electromagnetic induction works. Now, nowadays, if you are following the technology news, people are working on wireless charging. The smartphones, for example, you can charge them by just putting them on a table. You start charging them. And people are also working on charging electric cars without having to connect a cable. So all those things work by what's called the induction, and Faraday's law is what will be what describes this phenomenon. And of course, inductance, and we will be studying eventually the electromagnetic oscillations. Well, this is basically a radio. Well, I would suggest you to sit in this corridor. I mean, the view from the sides are very bad. And then once we study the charges moving with constant speed, we have, of course, the accelerated charges, and that is how we create the electromagnetic waves. So, for example, when you turn on the light, there's all this light coming out. They are basically created by accelerated charges. All light that you see, they are created by accelerated charges. So whenever a charge accelerates, it creates an electromagnetic wave. Light is just one kind of electromagnetic wave. And all the radios or these Wi-Fi signals, they all work by creating electromagnetic waves, which are created by accelerated charges. And we have, well, just 12 chapters to cover in 14 weeks. That's just, I mean, we will manage it. Now, the supplementary material is the same. There's the Ohanian, it's a classic book. I mean, these are the Feynman lectures on physics. I think it's still on volume 1. The mechanics and electromagnetism should be on volume 1 or volume 2. They are free of charge online. There are some open course where, okay, so this is no longer available, but you can find it on YouTube. There is the Turkish translation over here, and there are lots of materials also on the Made to Open Courseware site. And of course, you have the library. Okay, these are the classic things that I also said throughout the semester last year. Probably you are already bored of hearing all of those things. So I will just skip them. So this is the breakup of your points. You will still have pop quizzes, 2 midterms, 1 final, homework, and you also have your bonus, which you can choose your topic already. Now, the pop quizzes, I hope to make more pop quizzes this year. I mean, you should come to the class, the basic idea. And you should hand in your own quiz. You cannot hand in a quiz for somebody else. The homework, okay, there was a problem with, I mean, there was some tension that I heard between you and the assistants about the similar homeworks. I mean, I encourage you to work together. You should discuss together. You can discuss with me. You can discuss on even in OTTE class, in the discussion forum in OTTE class. But whenever you write down your homework, it should be what you have learned. I mean, the best way to make sure that it is so, I mean, we are, as human beings, we are quite deceived by ourselves also. To make sure that what you write is what you actually learn, discuss with your friends, just meet in some place, discuss with them, and then leave them when you're writing down. Make sure that you are on your own and that your friends are away from me and don't call them, etc. Just write what you know. This way I can guarantee you that there won't be any similarities. This year, okay, the regulations in Turkey, I mean, for those who are born in Turkey, you are already used to. Those who are newcomers, you are probably getting used to. Regulations change every now and then. And there won't be any recit examinations anymore. Previous years, you had the chance of a recit examination if you get an FF or an FD grade. So I was forced to give you an NA if you didn't follow the regulations. So if you missed the quiz, you missed the pre-reports, etc., I won't give you any NA anymore. You get an F. You miss too many pop quizzes, or you don't take the midterms without any excuse, miss pre-reports, you won't be able to take the final. Well, last semester, I just relaxed them considerably, much more than before. If you ask me, these regulations are just stupid things. I shouldn't be feeling the need to put these regulations, but if I don't do them, you don't work. I mean, that is my personal experience. I have tried it many years. It doesn't work. So in Turkish we have this saying, unless I show the stick, you won't do anything. So this is kind of my stick, okay? I know, I think that these are stupid things, but if you keep following, if the majority keeps following the class until the end, like you did last semester, I will just remove all of them. So you will all be admitted to the final. But I mean, I'm afraid that if I say this thing, you will say that, okay, I will be the only one not following the lecture, so professor will let me follow the class, but then if 40 people think the same thing, so they will be the only one, I mean, don't risk it, come to the class. I mean, my purpose is to teach you, your purpose should be here, it should be to come here to learn, not to give these punishments, etc. And of course, these are not your rights. I mean, this is also something that gets confusing whenever you tell students that if they miss 20% of, let's say 30% of the pop quizzes, then they say, oh, I had this right to miss 30% of the quizzes, but then I missed one more. No, 30% of missing 30% of quizzes or missing 2 reports is not your right. It is just, there are 160 students registered in this course. I don't want to listen to your excuses when you miss some course. So if you just miss 2 pre-reports or 30% of the quizzes, don't come to me explaining your mistakes. It's okay, there won't be any consequences. I mean, things happen. There might be a traffic jam, a heavy snow in summer, etc. You might miss something. But I mean, if it is more than 30%, it's not just some accident. Okay, these are the common excuses that I have been listening to. Okay, there's a frequently asked question in Opti class. Read that before sending me any email. Okay, in the frequently asked questions, this part has been slightly modified. I mean, before I was telling you that, okay, you should write 1-page pre-report. Then I started receiving these pre-reports without any questions, or with pre-reports that has like 3 words in a line. So that makes 2 sentences makes 1 page. So they were saying, okay, this is a 1-page report. No, it's 300, more or less 300 words. So your pre-report should be around 300 words. I mean, if it's 4 pages, 300 words, that's fine. It should be 300 words. Now, then don't come and ask me if it is 290 words, is that a problem? It won't be a problem, but I will not tell you that 290 is not a problem. I will not put a limit on that. So try to stick with 300. Not 400, not 200 or 100, 300. Yes?
I had a problem with pre-reports last semester when I was writing. The content in the book wasn't, the 1 page wasn't enough to cover the whole content. And I was having trouble with that. I don't know what I should do.
Well, you see, that is also one problem we have with graduate students. Because when they go, let's say, go to a conference, etc., they are given 15 minutes. I mean, you are doing your research for 4 or 5 years, and you are only given 15 minutes to cover it all. Of course, you will not be able to cover everything. You have to know how to select. Now, the idea of these pre-reports is that come to the class already having an idea of what we will be discussing. You don't have to learn it in detail, etc., but at least have an idea. And write the questions. Questions for me are more important than what you write in the other parts. Now, what I expect you to do is read it through. I don't spend too much time. Read it through. Just spend some, let's say, half an hour, 1 hour thinking about what the chapter is about. Then, of course, you will have problems. Now, last semester, there were some students who were claiming that they don't have any questions. They understood everything. Okay, this year, I will make an exception for those students. So if you think that you have understood everything, sit in the first row. If there are any questions, I will ask you. So if you can answer every question, then no problem. If you don't ask any questions in your pre-report. So if you are not sitting in the first row, and if in your pre-report you didn't ask any questions, I will not accept your pre-report. Okay, these are just fun. I mean, read it. I mean, you have already read it last year. Okay, this is one of my favorites, which always comes. Okay, this is another thing. I mean, believe me, there are like 120 pre-reports that will be coming every week. Reading them is not fun. Okay, this is also one of my favorites. Now, okay, this I had prepared last year. These are more or less the same slides. One of the questions from the students was how much you should work. Just 1 hour is enough, or 2 hours is enough. Turkey is making a change to this, what's called the ECTS, European Credit Transfer System. So, I mean, the current credit system, if you have realized, is based on how many hours that the professors teach. It's not based on how much time you spend on the course. So some of you were complaining with all the that the course load of this course and the course load for the experiment was more or less equal, but your experiment course is just 2 credits, and this is like 5 credits. So this is not fair. But as I said, it's based on how much time the professor spends in the class. Well, this one is based on how much time you spend on the course, whether doing homeworks, doing some research on the internet, etc. So the basic idea is each semester you should be getting around 30 ECTS credits. 30 ECTS credits means you should spend this much amount of time. You should spend that much time on your course load in one semester. That is approximately 60 hours per week that you should study or do something related with the course. Let's say you rest one day, you should rest one day. That makes 10 hours per day you should spend on all your courses. Well, you are typically, okay, let's say you have 10 hours of coursework, whether attending the class, doing homeworks, etc., 8 hours sleep, 2 hours eating, so that makes 20 hours a day, the minimum. And then, of course, you have 4 hours extra time. Yeah, especially if you are not living on campus, that 4 hours is for the transport. So that is how much you are expected to work. Okay, you shouldn't cheat, and you shouldn't copy, whatever the circumstances are. Okay, I will just skip these ones. Yes. These are some nice things I like. Now, any questions about the course before I continue? This is all I will say about how we will be carrying out the course. I mean, there are a couple of students who didn't take this course before. Ask your friends how we carry out the course so you can get more detailed information. Now, any questions? Except the subjects that we will be covering, the way we will be carrying on the lectures will be identical to the previous semester. So these are your grades from 109. This is the horizontal axis is your midterm 1 grade. So this is the midterm 2 grade. Those blue lines are the students who took midterm 1 but didn't take the midterm 2. And those 2 lines, they just mark if your grades differ by 20. I mean, if you remember, I had this criteria for taking the makeup if your grades differ by 20. This is why I have that 20 level. Well, this is kind of shifted. I mean, if you would shift these lines slightly below, you will see that almost all students lie on that line. So you always get your exam grades are, well, this tells me that, okay, midterm 2 was a bit more difficult than midterm 1. Well, I had realized it when I was grading it. There were too many questions on subjects we had just discussed. But if you compare the midterm 1 and midterm 2, their levels were more or less the same. And again, this is plus minus 20 lines, the band. And if you see, there are no students outside that. Well, there are very few. This is, again, midterm 2 and final. Midterm 2 grades were a bit lower than the average, the other finals. Now, this is midterm 1 is correlation with the average grade you obtain in the exams. So you see that there are just a couple of students outside there. The same thing in midterm 2. I mean, although it was a bit more difficult, it doesn't you don't deviate much from your average. And this is the final with the correlation of your final grade relative to your average exam grade. So what does this tell you? Okay, that tells something about my exam preparation at least. It doesn't change much. The difficulty of the exam is more or less the same. So what does it tell you about you? So what is your conclusion from all these colorful plots?
We don't know what is the average. What is the curve after the exam?
I mean, you can ask. I mean, I don't mind if you ask it. I'm not going to answer it. You are free to ask. You see, this is a student's dream. So you think that, okay, for the next exam, you will work so hard that you will get such a high grade, etc. Now, these plots, they tell me that it doesn't happen. So your grades are more or less always flat. I mean, there are a few exceptions to these rules, and it's understandable that maybe in the exam date you were not feeling so well, or I don't know, some other thing happened to you, you got a low grade, and that's why I take those students to the makeup so they can just make it up. They can come back to their average grade. Now, one way of interpreting these things is that you can take the pessimistic view, and you can say that, okay, so whatever I do, I cannot change my grade, especially if you are somewhere over here. Well, you will be failing this physics course, etc., whatever you do. So that's the kind of the pessimistic approach. But I don't have that approach. What I think is that what this tells me that one thing you don't change. I mean, you learn something else, some new stuff throughout the year. But one thing you don't change is the way you study or the questions you ask. You don't change that. And I believe that as long as you don't change that, there's no way you can change your graph. There's no way you can move, I don't know, from here to here. So that's kind of your chance. I mean, that's your warning from the first day. I mean, don't wait until the final day and think that you will work so hard for the final that you will get 100 from the final, although you have just received something like 20 or 25 in your midterms. I mean, if you are always taking 20, 25 in the midterms, unless you make a drastic change, nothing changes in your final exam, and nothing changes in your average grade. So if you are lying within this range, now, in fact, what surprises me more is that the student somewhere over here. For me, that is more surprising than having students over here. You see, most of the discussion, most of your questions about that you are asking, almost all of them, is just trying to guess what kind of questions will be asked in the exams, so that you will learn that kind of questions, and you will try to get a high grade in the questions that I am asking. Rarely you are discussing about really understanding the material. It's just a few students. In the instructions in the exam, a few times I also send it beforehand, before the exam, so that you can read it. It says that you have to explain all your steps. The number of students who actually explain what they are doing among 120, 130 students is just 4 or 5. Nobody explains anything. Everybody is just writing down equation after equation after equation. You have to be explaining things. I mean, you have to be explaining things to yourself also. Now, when I'm discussing with some of you have questions. When I ask you what you think about how to solve, you start writing equations. I mean, without thinking about what you are solving, I'm surprised that there are students over here. I'm not surprised about having students over here, because most of you are not really asking questions to understand the material. Well, I'm following one forum. Well, there's a nice forum that I started following. It's called Quora. If any one of you are not, just have a look. One of the questions was from a student who, I don't know, I think he was going to Stanford. He was asking for suggestions what he should do. What were the suggestions for such good students? Now, there was a professor from Berkeley. He also has a general physics book which looks nice. I'm reading it. It was in the library. Yes. I think he said that either him or there was another famous mathematician. You should get a B as soon as possible. I mean, he wasn't saying that you should get an A plus, etc. You should get a B as soon as possible so that you should stop worrying about your grades and start worrying about learning. That is what most of you don't do. That is why I don't answer your questions about the curve. I mean, that is not relevant. The relevant thing, of course, I mean, passing a course is an important factor in your course, but that is just a byproduct of learning. If you learn, you will pass the course. You can pass the course without learning, but eventually you will fail in your life. You should be concentrating not on the kind of questions that I will ask in the exam. That is why I don't distribute the solutions to the homework. You shouldn't be worried about my type of questions. You should be worried about learning the material. If you learn the material, then of course you can answer any type of question, whether I am asking those questions or somebody else is asking those questions. So my suggestion, especially if you are somewhere over here, is to give this a try. I mean, if your grade is over here, most probably this semester you will also be staying over there unless you make a significant change. So you will be failing the course. Give it a try. Forget about the grades for this semester and see whether you will be staying over here or moving up this incline. My guess, my claim, my expectation is that once you forget about the grades, wherever you are over here, you will be moving up. You will not be moving down, you will be moving up. Now, if you consider the exams that I did in the last semester, half of the points were from questions that you could have just answered without even any calculation. So I don't see any reason, if you understand the material, why your grade should go below 50. Or let's say you just confuse one question, why you get below 40. Now that's one of the reasons why I increased the points in the first short questions. So you should be getting a reasonable grade if you understand the material, even if you cannot solve complicated problems. Now, any questions about the course, about the materials? Well, there's a bonus. The bonus is still here. Now, there's still half a letter grade. If you want to do it, do it. I mean, I don't think it will influence too much your grades. So let's give a 10-minute break now, then we will continue. So you should be back at 4:20.
Geçen dönem ben yapmamıştım.